All right, on to standard two. This is basically the anatomy of the nervous system. It's going to be split up into a couple parts. The first thing that you need to do is we're going to spend this entire pass off right now on just neurons. So, neurons are the little cells that make up your nervous system. So, they're very, very specialized. They are cells that can transmit and generate electrical signals. Now, muscle cells can pass on electrical signals, but they don't generate them themselves. They have to be activated on by a neuron. So, nerves are the really specialized cells that can not only pass electrical signals but can generate them as well. Is a basic unit of the nervous system, and it's shaped like this. Now you are going to need to know this anatomy, and so there's a couple basic areas that you need to know. Dendrites are where the receiving part of this neuron, because what we're always doing is we're passing a direction. Remember, the nervous system's job is to move signals, whether it's from a sensory area to your brain, from a configuring or a processing area out to do a response. All of those things you have to bring in this message from one area and send it out the other. And so you always bring in the information through the dendrites, then it goes through the cell body. And the cell body has the function of determining whether it's a strong enough input to continue it. So if you have a bunch of extra thoughts are going through your head right now, they're just not strong enough to activate anything. And so that's what these dendrites do. They send the signals into the cell body. The cell body is just like any other cell body. It has a nucleus, has a Golgi apparatus. It's making proteins. It's doing its normal stuff. And it's also determining what's a strong enough signal to get sent down the axon, because the axon is where all the outgoing signals are going to travel through. And at the end of the axons are these axon terminals. And so as long as you know those four pieces, the myelinated sheets, if you know those, that's fine, but you're not going to get tested or quizzed on in this class. You will in the future, but not in this class. Um, and then just know that the order that they go through. So dendrites, cell body, axon, then axon terminals. You'll be solid on the anatomy of a neuron. Okay, and then let's just go through a couple unique things about neurons. First off, this is a generic neuron that I was showing you. This is basically the one in your spinal cord is the one that you need to have memorized. It's the picture that always shows up, but realize that it's the generic form because it's really easy to find spinal cords and look at neurons inside of spinal cords. And so that's why that's the first one that got drawn, and it's kind of the basic idea. But notice that they're all very unique and can adapt to different purposes. So where you need more signals coming into single cell bodies, like in your brain or your cerebrum or your cerebellum, there it is. If you have some really basic stuff happening, like you're just getting, you can't have the cell body that close to your dendrites, like in your eye, where you need the space for more dendrites, then the cell body's on the outside of the eye. And so you have a long dendrites. But wherever you need these specialized things, just remember that they're always a signal coming in towards the cell body, and then from the cell body out is the axon. So dendrites bring it into the cell body, from the cell body out is the axon, to the dendrites of the next cell, through that cell body and out through its axon. Dendrites, cell body, axon, and then the axon terminal is what technically gets close to and causes a synapse with the next neuron. Okay. And then this is kind of what a heat map of those electrical signals look like. This is a zebrafish that's been given special chemicals and they watched under a special microscope so they could see these signals. And when you see that big flash, notice this is on a loop. Check the seconds over here. Okay, when you see that big flash, that's what happened when they put some prey in front of it. And so you can see that there's always something happening inside of your brain, and maybe you're not using 100% of your brain at all times, but it doesn't mean that there's any part of your brain that isn't functioning. Every part of your brain is filled with neurons, and if neurons aren't being used, neurons die. And so when you see that big flash, it's activating. So all of its senses are now keen, and it's sending a bunch of responses to a bunch of different muscles because it saw food. Pretty cool. All right. Next up will be the brain, but get this pass off done on the neuron, and I'll see you in a sec.